We are gathered here today to talk about the capacity building grant. I am going to share my screen here momentarily, and then we will dive in. All right. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started here. We are gathered here today with all of the FY24 capacity building grant recipients for the Farm to School and Early Childhood Capacity Building Grant. So congratulations again to everyone for their grant awards. Today we are going to have what we call grantee orientation. It's basically just an opportunity for us to connect. I'm Gina Clitheroe. We've probably gotten lots of emails from me. I'm the program manager, and I'll be your primary point of contact when questions come up about the grant over the next year and a half. So this is an opportunity for us to meet each other and talk through the basic mechanics of the grant, give you an overview of what's expected, the timeline, and a little bit of preparation in advance of the in-person action planning day, which I'm super excited about happening at the end of March. So without further ado, let's jump on in. So the way that this is set up right now is this meeting is being recorded, and that's because not everyone is able to attend today. This recording is going to be shared for your reference later on, and also for the benefit of folks that aren't able to join. It is a requirement that one person at least from each grant management, each team views this recording or participates today. So thanks everyone for being here. The way that the Microsoft webinar is set up is that folks are automatically muted and have their videos turned off for the recording, but we're going to open it up for questions probably around like 2/3 of the way through our time today. And if you raise your hand, I can unmute you. You can also type any questions in the chat as we go through if there's questions that emerge. And I can also, if you also raise your hand, I can also unmute you before we get to that Q&A period if you want to directly address something that is on the slide at that point in time. So for this presentation today, we're going to provide a little overview of the grant. We're going to talk about the critical support infrastructure for all of the grant teams, including the coaches and the technical assistance providers. We will prep for the action planning day coming up here on March 23rd. I'm curious how many times in this session I'm going to mention the date that it is, but I just want to make sure it's on everyone's radars because it is a Saturday. We're going to talk through the grant agreement and work on building some familiarity and comfort for folks and reading through that kind of technical document. We're going to talk about the reports. And last but not least, Diana Ferguson, who is here joining me from the Agency of Agriculture, she's going to give a walkthrough of how to submit your first claim for payment in web grants. So let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for being here today. So at a high level, the Farm to School and Early Childhood Capacity Building Grant, the purpose is to help Vermont-based early childhood providers and schools build and strengthen farm to school and early childhood programs. And it's designed to support programs that are integrated throughout the classroom, the cafeteria, and the community, which are the 3 C's of farm to school. This grant is funded by the Vermont State Legislature, and it's made possible by the Rosa McLaughlin Farm to School Act of 2006. So I believe this year was our 17th year of operating this grant program at the Agency of Ag. It's evolved over the years. The grant title is now the Farm to School and Early Childhood Capacity Building Grant. Last year, it was just called the Farm to School and Early Childhood Grant. So things do change a little bit from year to year, but the basic premise and approach has remained consistent. This is a little visual diagram to show how the funding in this program works. So the Vermont State Legislature directs the Agency of Agriculture to operate these farm to school grants, and the Agency of Ag manages this grant funding and disperses it out into 3 different directions for the specific grant program, which is the capacity building grant. Funding goes to the schools and early childhood educators, which is all of your organizations here. Funding goes to the grant coach program, which is a critical component of the grant program to support mentorship and make sure that all of the grant teams have the guidance and support they need to successfully navigate through this grant program and with all the technical assistance partners. And then there's also funding provided to these technical assistance providers for trainings and one-on-one guidance. And we found that this combination of money, expertise, and mentorship is really supportive in building and sustaining longstanding farm to school programs. So happy that we get to continue with this grant program, and congratulations to all of you for being a part of it. And I look forward to seeing what's possible this year. So let's start with one part of that diagram there, which is the grantees, all of you. So the general expectations for this grant, as you all are aware, is that the grant projects will run from February 2024 through June 2025. Projects will address and support the 3 C's of farm to school and early childhood, farm to school in the classroom, community, and cafeteria. Each grantee has established a farm to school and early childhood team. This is super critical for the design of this grant. We've found over the years that having a team, a farm to school team that's made up of educators, administration, folks in the local communities, nurses, food service personnel, all together, having a team approach rather than just relying on one farm to school champion is really critical to building the buy-in to sustain these programs after the grant ends. So that team is super important and is kind of the backbone of this whole infrastructure. The farm to school and early childhood team will create an action plan at the action planning day coming up on Saturday, March 23rd. And that action plan will include a timeline, budget, and plans for engaging the technical assistance staff and providers to help you implement this plan. Grantees will submit 2 performance reports to the Agency of Agriculture over the course of this 1.5 year long grant. And grant payments are made on a set schedule, which is outlined in your grant agreements and is following the grantee's submission of a claim for payment in web grants, which we will get to the specifics of how to do that if this is your first time receiving a grant from the Agency of Agriculture shortly. So the next piece of that diagram to focus on here is the technical assistance support services. This is an area we really want to be super clear about, and it's part of what makes this program so unique is the involvement with these 4 wonderful nonprofit partner organizations. And that is the Vermont Garden Network to provide school and ECE garden expertise to help your team meet your garden goals and garden dreams. And the NOFA Vermont, which is a member of the Vermont Feed Project, provides local food procurement support for schools and early childhood programs to help them source more local food. Shelburne Farms provides curriculum support for K-12 and ECE's early childhood programs, that will support them in integrating farm to school within the classroom, and across the many disciplines that farm to school agricultural education is really relevant and powerful. And Hunger Free Vermont provides support with building and sustaining viable meal programs that support food access for children in Vermont. And together, these technical assistance providers can help you reach your goals as a farm to school team or farm to early childhood team. So these providers provide customizable trainings in these 4 areas. They also provide workshops designed based on the needs of multiple grantees. These are provided at no cost to the grantees. These are paid for out of the grant budget. And trainings are scheduled and designed to meet the availability and capacity of the grantee project team. There are some workshops that will be available in person and some workshops that will be available virtually. Team participation in these technical assistance offerings is a requirement of the grant. And that's because we've seen that it's been really supportive and helps teams be really successful. This year, we clarified that requirement. In the past, we said that engagement was required, and this year is the first year that we've clarified that of these 4 TA providers, each team must engage with at least 2 of these providers. And the reason why we set that requirement is so that the purpose is to build these programs that are working across the 3 Cs. And so it felt important to have more than one provider be required to engage with. So we are hoping that folks will, for example, work on their local food procurement and also work on their school garden, and rather than spending all of the grant funds to just focus on local food, because when we can build a more comprehensive farm to school program, that's the change that's going to last. So digging into each of those 4 technical assistance partners, I'm just going to give a bit of a description of the types of services that they provide. So the Vermont Garden Network is really focused on gardens, and they help grantees develop and increase their capacity to grow, utilize, and maintain gardens. They'll offer trainings on critical aspects of successful garden projects, as well as information about how to integrate gardens into a comprehensive farm to school or early childhood program. Some examples of how this organization has supported former grantees is providing a virtual workshop on setting garden program intentions and defining goals, providing direct technical assistance and expertise in designing garden beds to best meet program needs, and workshops focused on reinforcing garden engagement and food exploration through curriculum extension activities. Shelburne Farms provides curriculum professional development for staff and educators at the schools and early childhood programs. They support this in the K-12 and also early childhood area, and I put images and folks' names here so you can see the faces of the individuals that you'll interface with when you reach out to these organizations. So on the left here, you'll see Cynthia Green and Jed Norris. Those are the 2 early childhood specialists on the farm to school curriculum team. And Jen Cirilio and Courtney Mulcahy are the experts for K-12 curriculum integration. Over the course of the grant, the Shelburne Farms team will provide 4 in-person workshops in central locations. They also might provide additional virtual workshops, and as needed virtual support for grantee teams in addressing specific questions or needs, sharing resources and other materials that support curriculum integration within an educational setting. All of this work is based around how can we build integrated, interdisciplinary farm to school and agricultural education into our schools and early childhood programs, and in ways that will provide really enriching educational experiences and also meet the curriculum standard requirements that are applicable to the different age groups that they're working with. Local procurement training is provided by NOFA Vermont, and Kayla Strom and Lauren Griswold are the two experts there at NOFA Vermont, or the Northeast Farming Association of Vermont, who will provide this type of support. They will, the purpose of their work is to increase procurement of local and regional food at schools and early childhood programs across Vermont. And some of the key areas of support that they provide are in identifying local farmers and producers, navigating procurement regulations, utilizing farm shares and community supported agriculture shares, applying for the Vermont Local Foods Incentive Grant, and tracking local purchases. So some examples of how they've supported grantees in the past has been in-person meetings, meeting with food service directors, helping create goals for how for new product types that could shift to being locally purchased without making too much of an impact on the school food budget, and other creative approaches like utilizing CSA shares, identifying new vendors, focusing on center plate proteins, and so on. For Hunger Free Vermont support, the primary folks over there are Tim Morgan and Keely Agan. Tim Morgan is really great. They both are working with meal programs, and Keely Agan has a special focus on early childhood programs, and Tim Morgan is more focused on the K-12 audience. The purpose of their support is to enhance meal programs, improve child nutrition, increase food and nutrition access, and increase participation in federal meal programs. And they offer trainings for grantees on how can we expand participation in federal meal programs, long-term planning and menu forecasting, menu development, building participation in federal meal programs, implementing universal breakfast and or lunch, and working through any challenges associated with that, and exploring creative partnerships to support meal programs, and also facilitating access to food access program, including Three Squares Vermont and WIC. So some examples of how they've supported teams in the past has been providing outreach around these different food access programs, and they've also supported schools in expanding their summer food service program operations in order to expand food and nutrition security for children statewide. The last kind of component of that diagram is the grant coaches. So each grantee has been assigned to a coach who will work with them throughout the duration of the grant. Coaches are experts from within the farm to school and early childhood community, and your coach will reach out to you soon via email in advance of the action planning session happening at the end of this month. The support that they will offer will be in person if they are located near you, which we tried to make it so most of the coaches are located near their grant teams this year. Email communication and some combination of like virtual meetings and phone calls. Coaches will provide direct support through the process of creating a farm to school and early childhood action plan and timeline, completing the farm to school and early childhood rubric, which is part of that action planning process, connecting and coordinating with technical assistance service providers throughout the duration of the grant. So your coach should be attending your team meetings, getting a sense of what types of support and trainings could help take your program to the next level in a particular area or overcome obstacles, and helping pull in the appropriate technical assistance partner to work with your team on that, whether it's one of those four that we've listed on the previous slides. Coaches are also supportive in helping grow relationships between your educational organization and the local community to enhance project success. And because these folks are operating within the farm to school and early childhood network, they're also able to consult on specific topics that might not warrant a full-on engagement with the technical assistance provider, such as helping organize farm visits, some classroom activities, curriculum development, working with staff, and building momentum within your educational community. So we have not yet announced these coach assignments. This is the first time that folks are hearing, but these are the coaches that are going to be assigned to work with each of the grant teams. Kind of want to do like a little drum roll. It's taken some time and effort to figure out how to make these pairings. So I hope that you all find that your coach is the right fit for your team and can be supportive of you as you work through your grant project. And all of the coaches will be at the in-person action planning day in March. So if you see that the person listed as your coach on this list is not someone that you've met yet, don't worry, you'll meet them soon, and they will be there to support you through the action planning process and then subsequently throughout the duration of your grant. So let's talk about the action planning day. We're almost wrapped up with this part of the presentation here. So the action planning day is going to take place, as you all know, on Saturday, March 23rd from 9:45 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. It's an all-day event, starting kind of middle of the day with the recognition that while we tried to make this event as centrally located as possible, it's still going to be a long drive for folks, especially in the far northern and far southern corners of the state. But lunch will be provided, and there is a registration form to make sure that any dietary restrictions are known by the folks working on that. So I sent that information over email probably about a month ago, but I will follow up with another reminder to get every team member that's planning to participate in the action planning process for them to fill out this form so we can see if they are planning to join for the meal or if they're going to bring their own lunch, and if they are planning to join for the meal, whether or not they have any dietary restrictions. I also have gotten a few questions and been able to connect with folks on this about who's required to attend within the team. And we really do want to see the entire farm to school and early childhood team participate. There might be some kind of extenuating circumstances where one or two individuals can't participate, but we really do need a critical mass of the team to be there in order to ensure that there's voices are contributing to what this action plan looks like, and folks can start thinking about how they might plug into helping move this project forward. And your coach will be there, like I already said, but making sure that your entire team is aware of this, has this date on their calendar, and is able to attend is of utmost importance for this grant. It is a requirement. As you all know, that was included in the award notification email before accepting the grant was commitment to participating in this. It's a really important part of the process. And it's also going to be really fun. Action planning has been virtual since COVID. So here we are in 2024. This is the first time that we have gathered all of the grant teams in person together. And it's just a really powerful way to build relationships, learn from each other, and build some momentum and get the tools that we need for a really successful and exciting year ahead, as farm to school capacity building projects get underway. There are two documents that would be helpful for you to take a peek at before the action planning day, and I will send those over email along with the meal form. And this is the farm to school and early childhood rubric and the action planning template. Both of these are designed by Vermont Feed. Vermont Feed is going to be leading the action planning process, and so the contact, if you have questions about the workshop, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Courtney. I might direct you to Courtney if it's a question that I can't answer. But the action planning process helps teams organize, share responsibilities, and effectively accomplish their goals within the grant cycle. And your assigned grant coach will be there throughout that process to support you in um, creating that plan together. So the Farm to School Early Childhood rubric, which I'll send out, is essentially kind of like a self-assessment for your team to start thinking about where are some opportunities for where are you right now? Is this looking at the across the three C's of farm to school, looking at farm to school in the classroom, in the cafeteria, and in the community? What are your current kind of levels of engagement in those spaces and where might be some opportunities to grow? Going through that process before diving into the action plan template itself is part of the kind of the structure that Vermont Feed will walk you through. That being said, it's great to have you take a peek at both of these documents before the meeting, and especially look at the rubric and start thinking about where your team might land before diving in to the action planning process in a couple weeks. With that, we are going to switch into a review of the grant agreement template. And the reason that we're going to do this is because the grant agreement document, which most of you have signed at this point, the purpose of this grant agreement is it's the legal document that binds your organization with the Agency of Agriculture for the purposes of the grant. And there's a ton of really important information in those documents. So we just want to build some familiarity with the grant agreement structure. There might be times that you're wondering, like, is this allowed? Is that allowed? When does this report due? How much money can I when do I get, what's the payment schedule for the grant, and what's the process for getting that payment? What are the terms of how the organization has to operate in partnership with the agency throughout the course of this grant? All of that is illustrated within the grant agreement. So it's important that we take some time today to just kind of talk through some of the key components of that document. And if you haven't received your grant agreement yet, Diana Ferguson on this call is your key point of contact. There might be some kind of documentation challenges, and you've probably been in touch with her already on that. But she's your kind of point of contact for finalizing any of those last pieces of documentation that might be needed before the grant agreement can be signed. And when you receive your grant agreement, of course, if you haven't signed it already, make sure you read it and review it carefully before signing, and it will be saved to your program file, so you can review it in our grant management system, web grants, after the fact, but still good to have a copy of your own on hand for easy reference in case, just for convenience. But anyway, these are the four major components of the grant agreement. We've got part one, which has all the details about the numbers, what's the total budget, who the organization is, what are the primary points of contact, and what are our names and phone numbers and email addresses in case there are questions. And then the rest of the grant agreement that really gets into the detail, they're called attachments A, B, and C, but it's all within the same document. It could just be called like part A, B, and C. So attachment A is the scope of work, which includes the timeline, the reporting requirements, the general expectations that are specific to this program. So definitely encourage you to be totally familiar with all of attachment A. This is stuff that Diana and I wrote. It's specific to this grant, and it's really important that folks are fully aware of everything that's in attachment A. Attachment B is the payment provisions, and this is a part of the grant agreement that I'm pretty much always reminding people to look back at, because that outlines the payment schedule for when the different components of the grant award get distributed. And then finally, attachment C is kind of the standard state grant provisions that carries through to any grant agreement that the state puts out. And so that's not specific to this program, but it is really important that folks read and aim to understand everything in attachment C, because there are a lot of requirements that are just standard that folks should be aware of, including insurance requirements. And if you have any questions about attachment C, do reach out. And the sooner the better, so we can make sure we're kind of dotting our I's and crossing our T's and following all the rules for grant administration. Okay, so that was the overview that I wanted to offer. I'm just going to do a brief screen share to show what these different components look like, and offer an opportunity too for Diana to chime in if there's anything that you feel like would be important for us to connect on in the grant agreement. Okay. So I am going to share my screen here. I'm in Web Grants, which Diana will give you another closer look at here shortly. I'm in one of the grant agreements for this cohort. And so I'm looking to just pull up an example grant agreement to show you what it looks like. And this is where it will be saved for you when you do get into your own Web Grants account. So this is an example grant agreement. We have, again, this basic structure. Here's part one. This is like the grant details page. This shows the award amount, who the grantee is, what the name of the grant is. This is the capacity building grant. There's lots of details in here that aren't going to be super relevant, but knowing who the primary points of contact are for signing the grant agreement and for any questions that come up, that's listed here. And then my contact information is on the other side. Attachment A, as I said, this is the scope of work. So highly recommend that everybody fully understand everything in this component. This kind of lays out what's expected and the grant reporting expectations. And we also have the grant timeline built in here as well. Attachment B is the payment provisions. And so this lays out that prior to work being able to start and the release of any grant payments, these things must be completed, which at this point, all of this should be complete by the time this has been signed. If folks like, they can set up direct deposit through following this link to a form with the Department of Finance and Management. Just note that that's something that the agency does not directly manage. And if you're just setting up ACH payments now, your first grant payment will come through the paper check, but you can then subsequent payments can be direct deposit, which makes the payment process a little bit expedited. Grantees will submit all claims for payment in Web Grants, and if you have any questions, you can refer to the claims guide, which Diana will walk through. But essentially, we have signed this grant agreement to say that we will give your organization a certain amount of funding to do this farm to school project. But each of those grant payments is not just distributed automatically to the grantees. Grantees have to go into Web Grants and actually request those payments for the specified amount based on this payment schedule. So this section here is super, super important. And it's something that I look at all the time, and I expect that you will as well in advance of submitting any claims for payment. So this first provision here says that following full execution of this grant agreement, grantee will submit a claim in Web Grants. And once that is approved and by the grant program manager, the state will pay up to 50% of the total grant award. In this case, for the $7,000 grant, that is $3,500. And following the grantee submission of an interim status report, which is due in October, the state will pay the remaining 30%. And then after the grant project has been completed and there is a submitted final report that's been approved, then the state will pay the final 20%. And so those are the three amounts that teams will request. So that is the basic summary of the attachment A and B. This is attachment C. This is a standard document. And again, just highly encourage everyone to read through this, and if you have questions, to reach out. So I am going to pass the floor over to Diana now to talk through the specifics of the web grants process for submitting a claim for payment.
Thanks, Gina. Hi, everyone. I'm Diana. I think I've connected with a lot of you by email, and thanks for your patience, because funny documentation issues going on this year. So if you haven't gotten your agreement, we're either in the process of working something out, or Department of Finance might still be processing your documents. So thanks for your patience. And if anyone's waiting to hear back from me, I just am on the tail end of both of my kids' school vacations, so I'm catching up on email, and we'll get back to you shortly. So I will share my screen here in a moment, but as Gina said, I'll help you through the web grants process of accessing your grant and what it's like to submit a claim. So once your grant agreement has been fully executed, which means you or your counterpart has signed it, and then our state agency leadership has co-signed it, and then you have received an email from DocuSign stating that the signing is complete. It's a couple of days, usually between 1 or 2 days between that period and when your grant will become underway in web grants. So that just means I go in, I appropriate the dollars to your grant, make it active in the system, and then when you get the email notification that your grant is underway, or the primary contact on your grant receives that, that means you can hop in and submit a claim at any point from that moment on. So some of you are in that place right now. Some of you will be in that place within the next few business days or next week as your grant agreements continue to go out and be signed. So this is the perfect time to go over that process. So I'm going to share my screen here. And what I'm going to do is log in under a test account. So hopefully some of you have already logged in. Again, if your grant agreement has not been signed, then there's no need to do this. But once you are underway, then I'll show you the process of how to submit your first payment request, which we call claims. And while I'm pulling that up, I want to reference quickly this resources for grant applicants and recipients page. I can put this in the chat. So this is a page on our Agency of Agriculture website for, as it says, grant applicants and recipients, that has links to a lot of these documents that Gina and I are talking about today. In case it's helpful, just as a refresher, if you need to refer back, if you have questions, it's a good place to go before you reach out, just around the documentation itself. So, and the main reason is here at the bottom are links to our web grants tutorials. So how to submit a claim, how to submit a status report. As you can see, each one of those is a step-by-step guide that takes you through what you will be seeing essentially in web grants as you are walking through that process. So certainly you can refer back to today's recording, but if it's helpful to go right to the source, I'll show you what the claim guide looks like. Web grants claims guide. So as I said, step-by-step process. It's just nice because it's going to be over the course of more than a year that you'll be submitting multiple claims. So especially if you may have staff turnover or someone needs just a quick reference, that's helpful. So here we are in the system. I've logged in. This is the dashboard where you'll see work assignment at the top. And if you haven't used web grants before, it does have a little bit of a learning curve. So it's good to get familiar with it, even if you're not needing to do something in the exact moment. Feel free to log in and just hop around to get familiar. To access your particular grant, you go to grants here on the left. The darker gray buttons are the primary navigation tools in the system. So when you click on grants, you'll see all of the grants. If you have been awarded others from our agency in the past, they'll all appear there. And then yours, of course, this year's capacity building grant. Green underway means you can go ahead and submit a claim. Blue for awarded means yes, you have been selected for awarding this particular grant round, but your agreement has not yet been signed, or we're in the process of creating the budget for your award in the system. So if for some reason you get stuck in that awarded and you know that your agreement has been signed, just reach out and I'll be happy to help you out. But in general, when you're ready to submit a claim, click on your underway grant anywhere in this row. And it's taking a minute to think about it. Okay, so once you click on the name of your grant, it will take you to what's called the grant components menu. You'll see your total awarded amount here at the top. This will be your grant number. Everyone's is the same except different 2 digits at the end. And as you scroll down, you'll see this looks the same for everyone, the grant components menu. We've got general information. That's a system generated form that you don't need to worry about because I edit that. But the other ones, claims, status report, and budget are probably the ones that you'll interact with the most. And the budget and the project team form are just pulled through from your grant application. So whether it was the same as is or you edit it with Gina after it was submitted and approved, those 2 items are just there for reference if you need a refresher of what your team submitted for your budget. There it is. And it didn't pull through on this one because it's just the test, but that's okay. So as Gina said, grant agreement and amendments is where you will access your fully executed agreement. You can also download it in your email from DocuSign, which is a good thing. It's a good practice to do as soon as you have signed and you get that notification back. Okay, it's fully completed. Download a copy of your agreement right from that email, but you can also access it here in Web Grants. So it's just the named attachment grant agreement and then the blue hyperlink over on the right. That is how that's the second way you can access your agreement. So as you can see, I'm using these little blue hyperlinked words at the top. So I'm hovering over them. You can see it's giving me the same options as being back in the grant components menu itself. So rather than clicking back and forth, you can navigate between forms right here as well. Of course, if you want to go back to the main form, you can click grant list, which is a little bit confusing, but that's how you get back. Okay, so I will take you into claims right now. And if you are the financial representative, business office manager, whatever your title is, executive director, this will be your role to go in and submit the claim. So when you first go in, you won't see anything. It will just be an empty table, but your budget will have already been set in the back of the system. So it will be drawing down funds after you have submitted the claim and Gina has approved it. So your first step is to click Add Claim, which is the green button there on the right. And then it gives you sort of a little claim setup page where, yes, you're going to say this is my first claim. Always leave the type as reimbursement. It's the only option anyway. Report period is optional for you if you like to be able to have that in your head. But basically, knowing the number of the claim that it is all we really need to know. We're not really concerned with the particular date, so that's an optional field. Final payment request, leave that as a no until, of course, your last claim, which will be your third, and then you'll click Save Form, which is another green button on the right. So that step has created this claim details menu, and it's very simple. It's just one form. General information, again, is a system form, don't need to be concerned with that. But if you click on reimbursement, that is essentially the place where you are entering the amount that you are requesting from your grant as a payment in this form. So you'll see this very long table that looks complicated. It's actually not too complicated. If you click edit reimbursement, the third now green button on the right is sort of your tool to unlocking the next step. Once you click edit reimbursement, the fields in this box will unlock or load so that you can enter a number in. And so what you're simply going to do is enter your claim amount. So this is the amount in your grant agreement that is set forth or approved for you to be able to draw down as your initial payment. And then for each claim thereafter, the first two claims will be the same amount, which is 40% of your grant. And then your final claim is 20%, which Gina mentioned. So for example, if you have a $7,000 grant, you're going to be drawing down 2,800. So you enter your number and just.
It's actually 50% for this first
Oh, I'm sorry. You're
distribution.
right, Gina.
So yeah, it would be
Sorry for the
3,500.
confusion.
No worries.
We have different amounts for each program. So thank you, Gina. 50% for the first payment. So you're gonna enter your amount. So if it's the first claim, just make sure the amount corresponds with your grant agreement for the number of claim that you're submitting. So this is my first 3,500, which is 50% of my award. I'm gonna click Save Reimbursement. So now that has saved my claim amount, and this will automatically tabulate as you are submitting your second and third claim. You will see the total already paid out from your previous claims. So the next step is this orange button that says mark is complete, and that's telling the system that you're done editing. Of course, if you put in the wrong number, you can re-edit if you need to, but mark is complete is your last step before you can actually submit the claim. So now that I've marked as complete, it's telling me claim is ready for submission. And then you have this orange submit claim button right here, which I won't click, but it's there for you as the final step. And then at that point, once you have clicked submit, you'll be notified as the financial contact. Gina will be notified that the claim has been submitted, and she has a queue of claims from this grant and a number of other funding opportunities throughout the year. And so it can take several days or a week to go through the approval process. Of course, she'll be checking to make sure if it's your second or third claim that your reports are done and the content has been approved beforehand. So that's the quick, relatively easy process of claim submission. It's the hardest, obviously, the first time, and then hopefully you'll get more familiar after that. Definitely refer to the claims guide that I mentioned as a tool for walking through those steps if you need it. And then at that point, if you're done, then you can just log out. Using the back button here in Web Grants is helpful and sometimes more reliable than using the back button in your browser. So when you go back here to your grant components menu, I know that your first claim will be what you're doing first in the system, but then for those of you who are involved in submitting status reports, I won't go over it now, but I will just confirm that this is the same location that you will be editing and submitting status reports. And it's not too dissimilar from the process of editing and submitting the grant application, because you have a report and you're working on multiple forms, saving and submitting. So I won't walk through the process, but basically when the time comes in October, or if you're editing and submitting earlier than that, you will have your report loaded here for you in the system. We'll have that ready for you. And it will say the name of the report and editing. You'll just click here on it and edit the forms. And I'll just refer you to the status report guide back here. It looks a little different, but the concept is the same. The instructional guide walking you through. Oops, it's a PDF, so I don't know if it's going to allow me to show it to you. But essentially, that's there for you. And we know that many of you have multiple folks who are going to be working on the report together, because there's a lot of components to it, especially the final report. So just remember that you have this guide here, and that getting familiar in web grants is a good step for anybody who's going to be involved in either of those processes. And of course, if you hit any snags or something just doesn't look like it's supposed to, certainly reach out to me at any point. The system does sometimes act a little funny, or there is a glitch that we're just learning about for the first time. If you're that person or the guinea pig who gets to the report first and has any issues, then please let us know. I'm in the system every day and I'm happy to do some troubleshooting with you if you need it, or if you have a new team member who has just started during the course of the grant between now and June 2025, and they would like a little tutorial on how to navigate within the system. I'm happy to offer that if somebody just needs a person to talk to. So Gina, if I missed anything, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to end my screen share here and turn it back to you.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Diana. I think that covered the bases. And again, folks can reach out if they have questions and utilize those guides that Diana shared. I'd like to open it up for questions. I'm just going to share my screen one more time to put the timeline up as we go through. Oops. Sorry, bear with me here. Oh my gushness. Slideshow from current slide. Not now. Great. Oh, almost. Ah! Ow, I'm having computer issues today, aren't I? There we go. All right, now opening it up for any questions. I just wanted to put this in the background as we do so. If anyone has any questions at this point in time, you can use the raise hand feature, which should be on the top menu bar, little hand sign, or you can type a question into the chat. We have about 5 minutes together. All right, Suzanne, I see you. So I'm going to allow Mike, and then you have to manually unmute yourself now. It looks like you're still muted, Suzanne. So if you can find your mute button and unmute, be able to hear you. Well, Suzanne, I'm still not hearing you.
There we go.
Hello?
I got figured
great.
out.
There we go. You got it. Great.
I'm doing the wrong volume button. Thanks, Larissa. I was really just curious because I have a couple of people who are really interested to be on the team. They're just having a really hard time being able to commit to the day because of other obligations. Somebody has to work and their family time. So if you guys have any like way I can maybe try and get some people interested to come. People don't want to really give up their day. I have one person so far who's able and interested to come.
Well,
I had a meeting yesterday too with the food pantry people, and somebody might be getting back to me if they're able to make it. Do you think I should try and reach out to other people, or what do you think?
That's tricky. Yeah, best case scenario, it would be you would have the folks engaged in your project team that, will be planning to be there for the next year and a half would be the type of folks that would be great to have at the action planning day.
Yeah.
So if there are other folks in the community that you feel like would be have the potential, then I think that's great. And the greater the turnout, the better, because it is such an important part of the process. But I would hesitate to have you be kind of scrambling for folks that maybe aren't going to be the best suited right now. But if you do know that there are folks that could be valuable, I think the food shelf would be a great community partner to bring in. But if you could try to bring in at least one person from the academic side of things, from the food service side of things, administration, and then if possible, someone from the community. That's kind of like the core, those are the
Yeah.
core roles. So if a specific individual on the education side can't come, if you could find another teacher that could be there,
Okay.
then that would be best case scenario, is to have that a comprehensive set of folks there representing those different areas.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I've asked about 12 different people from different areas. Again, it's just they've having a really hard time trying to commit and give up that day. So I could just talk to them some more about it.
Yeah, yeah, and one thing that can help too is that the grant budget can be used for mileage and also staff time to participate in any of these, any
Hmm.
any activities. So if your organization is able to compensate using those grant funds, then that could be one way to support participation from
Okay.
within your organization, or like a stipend or something for an external partner to be able to participate.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just get that claim submitted as soon as possible so you have access to um, those funds sooner
Yes.
rather than later. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Suzanne, don't hesitate to reach out if there are any other questions after this call
Okay.
too.
You actually answered quite a bunch of them already. So
Okay, great.
thank you.
Wonderful. Any other questions from folks? Beth, I see you just hopped on. No worries at all. This meeting was recorded, so we'll send the recording to you. But feel free to listen for more questions. So I saw Peggy's hand up and then Jackie, so I'm gonna allow Peggy's mic. So Peggy, you have to unmute on your end now. And I don't have a 12 meeting, so I can stay on it just a couple minutes later too. It's, there you go.
Okay, I think I found it.
Yes, great, we hear you.
So when you were, I've dealt with some claims from the Vermont Agency of Education, and
Okay.
it's completely reimbursement. But it seems like in this one, we can have access to the first 50% of funds
Mhm.
and then draw down on those. So it's not really a reimbursement.
Right.
Is that correct? So it's a
Yep.
prepay on that part, and then
Mhm.
by the time we get to the end of the grant and we're looking at payment 3, that's when we're going to be downloading documentation of how all the funds were used to get the final 20%. Is that correct?
That is correct. So if you, at the end, if you haven't fully spent down the grant, that last payment will likely be prorated, or so that we're not overpaying for what's been spent throughout the course of the grant. But the first two payments are upfront.
Okay. And is there any, again, I'm coming from a different perspective with Vermont AOE, where it's very particular about what type of expenses
Mhm.
are um, utilized. So you mentioned mileage, you mentioned a stipend.
Mhm.
Is there a specific budget that breaks it out, like for supplies, or is it just anything that pertains to the planning and implementation of this capacity building grant?
Yeah, so it's the latter. So it's anything that pertains to the implementation and planning of this grant, and you will submit so everyone submitted like a proposed budget with their application, but we know that things change, especially after the action planning process. Budgets tend to get kind of reallocated based on what the high priority needs are, what supports folks find out are available. But in the interim report, in the final report, you'll submit an expenditures report. That'll be a very simple table, similarly like how much did you spend on supplies in the last, 8 months of the grant? How much did you spend on personnel? How much did you spend on travel, etc.? So you'll be sharing out of what you did, but there are no like explicitly prohibited costs. If you have questions about things that might be prohibited, reach out. I think the one thing that we have come into issues with before is that folks have proposed to spend grant funding on professional development. That's not part of the farm to school technical assistance support that's already offered. And we have hesitation around that because we don't want to be double paying. We're already paying for these technical assistance offerings. So that would be like the one thing that we've said is ineligible for funding so far. But otherwise, gardening supplies, local food, personnel for folks to participate in workshops, substitute teachers to come in so that your primary teacher can go to professional development training with Shelburne Farms. Those are all eligible expenses. And if you have specific questions, you can reach out to me or your grant coach. But in general, most things are allowed as long as they're in alignment with your action plan and part of reaching those farm to school goals.
Okay, one final question on that.
Yeah.
Would someone like me, the fiscal agent, need to go to the action planning day, or would it benefit me to go to the action planning day?
Not necessarily, Peggy. You don't have to. It's most important for folks that are going to be involved in the actual project. This session is what's really important for someone in your role, so you learn how to like get into the systems and do claims. But if you're not going to be involved in the project implementation, then it's not necessarily required for you to participate. And it's going to be better suited for the person who's like the primary grant manager for your team
Perfect.
and the rest of the team. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's what I suspected, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that. There might be others that had the same question, so that was great. Let me allow Jackie's mic. So Jackie, if you can unmute yourself, we'll be able to hear you. There you are.
Hear me now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Excuse me, so I have a cold, so if I start a coughing fit, I apologize. On cue. You're not part of the project team, just so you know. So in addition to, it not necessarily being your wheelhouse, there wouldn't be the requirement. We had initially put together a project team with the idea where like the principal and I, well, more the principal was putting together a team of people within the building, the school, that had interest in supporting a farm to school initiative in the classroom and in the community.
Mhm.
Excuse me. But it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 people.
Mhm.
And that doesn't even begin to include any community members. So when it comes to the attendance in March, the building principal, the overall principal, the food service director, and myself were going to go.
Great.
But is that like, do we need to have community members in attendance in addition to myself? And do we need to have teachers and other personnel coming?
It would be best case scenario to have at least one teacher there, and would be great to have a community member also. But I would say, you said that list of several, those were all teachers or those were all community members, the longer list?
They're all teachers. So it's teachers and then the principals and the food service director as well as myself.
Yeah, I would say if you could get at least one of those teachers to come, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like the kind of prime size for a team that's going to participate based on like the tables and stuff would be like 5 to 7 people. So once you get up into like the 9, that might be a little bit bigger than you need. That being said, like Suzanne said, sometimes you invite 12 people and only 3 are able to participate. So if you're able to confirm that like 7 people can go, that's great.
So follow-up question.
Yeah.
Should I be amending the project team to like the Vermont grant project team to be more specifically like the administrators, myself, maybe 1 or 2 teachers, and then 1 or 2 community members instead of having it so school focused?
I think, so the project team, this is a good question. So for the action planning day, just based on capacity, it might not make sense for all of those teachers to participate. But I think for continuing on with your farm to school team throughout the year, I think it would be great to have all of those teachers involved. And so I think it's okay for your project team to show up on the larger side with the understanding that not everybody's going to be able to attend the action planning session. So yeah, I think you can keep that team. I need to come up with a process this year for how folks can update their teams more easily, because there's been kind of a back and forth emails and so on. So I'll think about that a little bit more, but for the purpose of the action planning day, just making sure that everybody that is planning to attend has registered is super important. And I'll, if they haven't already done so, please, if you can support them in doing so, when I send this email out to you all, that'll include this recording. I'll also have the link to the registration form there that everybody who's going to attend the action planning session should fill out, so we know what the dietary needs are for the group.
Fantastic. And then I'm in my grant web grants thing, and
Yeah.
it says that my grant has been awarded. I don't think we've received anything else via DocuSign, and I know you guys said that you were sort of behind the 8 ball a little bit there.
Yeah.
Is there anything, like, is there a way to know that we're, like, something's in our court to do?
Yeah. Diana, would you be able to respond to that question? It's a great one.
Yeah, I can get, I think, I'm trying to remember with yours specifically, I'm not sure, but I will check. And like I said, some people are at very different parts of the process, like almost there, and I just need to send it out today or tomorrow. And then some people are needing to edit or send updated documentation. So I will, if you have not already signed your grant agreement, you should receive it by the end of the week if everything is good. If everything is not good and we need documentation updates from you, then I will get in touch with you also by the end of the week. So you'll have a status update one way or another. I am going to be sending out about 4 agreements or so today or tomorrow. So I will get in touch with you directly though, just to let you know about the
Thank you so much.
documentation. Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Peggy, I see your hand came back up.
Jackie, we got the signed grant agreement. Jackie and I are in the same organization.
Got it.
We haven't met face to face yet, so I just wanted to tell her, yes, we got the signed grant agreement.
Okay, great. Thank you, Peggy. I didn't see it on my end, but it might be because you're the fiscal agent, so it's just above me.
Yep.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Great news. Okay. If folks need to drop off, feel free to drop off anytime. I know we're running a little bit over, but I want to answer Suzanne's question. So Suzanne, if you can unmute. There you go.
Now that I know how to do it. I was going to actually just say, you're still waiting for some paperwork. I emailed something over this morning about our W-9, and I've been in touch with our insurance person. I had to go through a couple hoops of fire to get the proper person, but they should hopefully be sending that out by the end of the day. Whatever
Yes,
piece-
thanks, Suzanne. I did get your emails, and so I'll wait to get your COI, and then your W-9 will be processed by Department of Finance in the next
Okay.
several business days, and then
I didn't
agreement
realize
will be good to
we
go.
actually have a couple of different insurance companies that we deal with. So,
Oh yeah, that's always
So-
a challenge.
so thanks for that.
Wonderful. Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks, Diana. Yeah, always so much learning happening in the insurance world every year with these grants. All right, I'm allowing Lisa's mic. Lisa, if you can, oh, it didn't go through. Hold on. So Lisa, if you unmute, we'll be able to hear you.
Yes, I did email you this morning, Diana, because I haven't received hours also for OC Cares in case there's any issues of paperwork or anything.
Yep, thanks, Lisa. I also got your message, and I think yours is one of the ones where Department of Finance is still working on the W-9, but I will double check that and get back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we can wrap this up. All right. Thanks everyone for joining and for participating. And thank you, Diana, for presenting and supporting this grant. And hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. And we'll see you all in person soon on
Yay, thank you.
March 23rd, Saturday.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
so much. Bye-bye.